auditor and the city attorney for their leadership on these reforms to hold our employees and officials to the highest ethical standards. The council president is proposing a very strong anti-nepotism ordinance so Oaklanders can be assured that city government is free from nepotism, patronage, and favoritism. There are two main provisions in this proposed ordinance. The first is that the ordinance would prohibit relatives from working in the same chain of command. This includes both direct and indirect supervision. Second, the ordinance would prohibit relatives from influencing the terms of condition or hiring of their relatives. Disclosures would be required at the time of hiring to ensure that employees do not violate the ordinance, and a one-time cleanup will also be necessary to ensure that all current employees comply with the ordinance. This is the quality of anti-nepotism ordinance that Oaklanders and current and future city employees deserve, and we look forward to working with the whole city council, and the council president hopes to get their support and the support of the mayor to pass this ordinance and implement it properly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak briefly about the three personnel reforms that you see in your package. The decision maker for this set of reforms is not the city council, but the city administrator working at the direction of the mayor. These three administrative reforms in the personnel area will involve the city attorney's office in all significant employee discipline matters at a much earlier stage than has been the practice over the past 5 years. It will correct flawed personnel procedures to reduce taxpayer liability, particularly in the area of disability accommodation, and it would ensure uniform application of disability accommodations. I'm pleased to report to you that I spoke with the mayor yesterday. He has agreed already to these three measures in principle and has assured me that Mr. Lindheim will work together with my staff on final details of these three provisions, and we anticipate having them signed and in effect by the end of this week. Next item, records management. The city's system for retention of public records is atrocious. For example, it is city policy to delete email from our servers after only 30 days. It is amazing to me that an operation of the magnitude of the city of Oakland would delete email from its servers after 30 days. We are a public agency. These days, as with most large organizations, a great and ever-increasing amount of our business is done through email. People don't use hard copy directives the way they did and memos. They use email. The permanent deletion of important directives, decisions, and electronic memoranda trails, paper trails, if you will, puts a shroud of secrecy over the workings of City Hall, prevents public officials from ever being held accountable for their actions. It is also difficult without retaining emails for a reasonable period of time. It is difficult for the elected watchdogs, the city auditor and the city attorney, to do our jobs when critical documentation supporting an audit trail cannot be found and key legal facts are deleted from our servers after only 1 month. We are also calling for a renewal of the Records Management Task Force. The auditor and I pushed the administration for this more than a year ago, but we were shut out of the process. And now, to further speak on the issue of records management and to speak to the question of the whistleblower ordinance and the ethics program, I'll introduce to you my partner in this initiative, City Auditor Courtney Ruby.
Thank you, City Attorney Russo. Good morning, I'm Courtney Ruby. I'm the elected City Auditor of Oakland. As we have all witnessed, recent events have created a crisis of confidence in our city government. I believe that the 5 administrative reforms the City Attorney and I are offering here today get to the heart of creating transparent, principled, and accountable government in Oakland. The initiative I am presenting today are based on the premise that real power to change city government lies with the thousands of city employees who are working to deliver quality services with pride each day. The Whistleblower program and the Employee Ethics program carve out a clear path of change for city staff who want to be proud of their accomplishments and service towards improving the quality of life for Oakland residents. These are staff who recognize the complexity of city jobs, and the difficult ethical decisions employees sometimes have to make, and who recognize the responsibility of each and every employee to speak up when he or she sees fraud, waste, or abuse of the public trust. In addition to the programs outlined by City Attorney Russo, we are asking Council to approve an employee ethics program. The program will require ethics training for all department heads and supervisors to be completed every 2 years. Why ethics training? It's easier to do the right thing when we know what the right thing is. And that is not always obvious. Reoccurring training not only educates employees about how to make good decisions, but it creates a culture that reinforces shared concerns for ethics and provides support for employees who want to do the right thing every time. We will also create an online ethics resource center, which all employees may consult for information on relevant laws, regulations, and city policies. We are giving all city staff the tools essential for a better Oakland. Additionally, my office will conduct a survey to assess the current state of the city's ethical culture. We want to measure where Oakland stands today and then track our progress going forward. We want to identify ethical blind spots before they cause damage to the city. We will not only empower our employees, but provide an assessment that puts ethics at the forefront. Now to my office's whistleblower program that was passed unanimously in the Finance and Management Committee yesterday on to Council. When I took office last year, it became immediately clear to me that in order to do my job and protect the interest of the public, I must be able to look a whistleblower in the eye and guarantee him or her protection. Making it safe for employees who want to come forward with cases of possible fraud, waste, or abuse creates a culture of transparency and accountability in City Hall. Studies show over 40% of fraud is detected through tips from employees and the public. Employees are generally those who best understand how city government operates and are the most aware of wasteful or unethical behavior around them. However, employees usually fear that if they blow the whistle, they will be subject to many forms of retaliation. And unfortunately, these concerns are usually well-founded. State law was needed to legally protect a whistleblower's identity, so I authored Assembly Bill 2001 to provide that protection. Assemblymember Sandra Swanson has carried the bill in Sacramento, and it is currently headed to the Senate floor after passing Assembly in May on a 65-0 vote. To go hand in hand with the state legislation, we are asking the Council to pass the local whistleblower ordinance, which will provide further protection to whistleblowers by prohibiting retaliation. The ordinance will also provide a framework for the City Auditor's Office to establish a confidential hotline, to investigate whistleblower claims of fraud, waste, and abuse, and to also investigate claims of retaliation against whistleblowers. My office will encourage employees as well as citizens to blow the whistle through an educational outreach campaign. I am pleased to have Councilmember Kernahan and Council President De La Fuente as co-sponsors for this important and timely ordinance. Encouraging whistleblowing is the first step. If we, as the elected leadership of the city, are to create a government in which waste, fraud, and abuse will not be tolerated. I would also like to reiterate City Attorney Russo's comments on the importance of reforming the city's records management practices. It is difficult to do my job as your elected watchdog if critical documentation supporting an audit cannot be located. Strong records retention practices are fundamental to creating an open and accountable government. In closing, as your elected Watchdog officials, City Attorney Russo and I are calling on the City Council and the City Administrator to enact this critical package of reforms. The reforms we are proposing today will provide the tools we need to address the issues of integrity and accountability in our city government. Together, Oakland's elected leadership can show the citizens of Oakland that we are working to win back their confidence. And now I would like to invite Councilmember Carnahan to the podium to make some comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I am very pleased and proud to be here as a co-sponsor of the Whistleblower Ordinance, and also I endorse wholeheartedly the entire package of reforms that's being proposed by the City Attorney and the City Auditor. I want to thank both of them for their leadership and hard work in coming up with a clear and thorough set of rules and guidelines that are going to help create a culture of strong ethics, transparency, and accountability in our city government. This is a real opportunity, as City Attorney Russo said, to really revamp the way that we do things in the city of Oakland to ensure that the citizens can have confidence that our city government is operating effectively and with the highest ethics and in their public interest. So this combination of reforms, the whistleblower ordinance, the records retention, the anti-nepotism, are designed very thoughtfully to eliminate favoritism, patronage, conflicts of interest, or any other kind of unethical behavior. I think that it's going to be a great help to all the hardworking employees here in our city government to have clear rules and guidelines, and for everybody to understand the expectations that the public has for their Oakland city government. So I thank the city attorney, the city auditor for taking leadership on this. I look forward to these proposals coming forward to the city council in September so that we can enact them and make a giant step forward, a new day in Oakland. Thank you.
That's okay. Okay, so to sum up, we have five different pieces to this initiative. They all work together. They are all about transparency, accountability, checks and balances. I am happy to take questions. I want to say from the outset that we will not answer any questions about any of the allegations that are in the press about the prior administrator. It's inappropriate to the extent that the public is now agitated, angry, and aware of the need for administrative reforms at the city. Surely the past does inform the future, but it is not our intention here and now as part of this package to play a game of I gotcha or to otherwise continue to feed that fire. These systems need to be in place so that public confidence can be restored in the integrity of this government, regardless of the validity of any of the allegations. I just want to say from the outset we won't be answering any questions about the allegations that would be inappropriate. Yes.
Regarding your nepotism ordinance,
Yes.
There was mentioned that there would be cleanup of nepotism throughout the city. Does that mean employees who are right now will face some kind of a disciplinary action, or are you going to address the people that have been employed as a result of nepotism?
No, we are not going to punish anybody for operating under the prior rules. It's that simple. What we may end up doing is there may end up having to be transfers of authority, but no one is going to be punished for prior violations of the rules to the extent that that happened. But this is, again, let me reiterate, we need to move forward. We need to reestablish public confidence that this government is acting on the level and in the interest of the public. And I don't think it is in our interest at all, in my humble opinion, as the city attorney, It is not in the interest of this government to pursue a blame situation, which is so often what happens in these crisis circumstances. We will not do that. Let's fix the problem. Let's not get involved.
So when you
in blame.
say cleanup, that means from like this day on, this ordinance?
Yes, but we are going to review existing arrangements to make sure that people can have confidence in the circumstances. And we'll be bringing that forward. That'll be part of the discussion in September at the council. Yes, sir.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering if you could just give a few...
Can you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is John, I'm with KPFA Radio.
Great, thank you.
I was wondering if you can just give a few examples of how the whistleblower ordinance will protect people from retaliation.
Let me turn that over to City Auditor Ruby.
Good morning. The whistleblower ordinance makes sure that if an employee is retaliated against, then it'll be my office's responsibility to go in and investigate to ensure that if that's occurring, then action will be taken. There is civil penalties under it that a person could be held liable for $5,000 in addition to being reprimanded as far as the city policy. So that is how the retaliation will be handled so the whistleblowers are protected, and it's very critical piece of the retaliation. So when I authored the Whistleblower Protection Act that went to Sacramento, AB 2001, that was to protect the identity of the whistleblower. This piece is to protect them against retaliation. We have to create an environment where employees feel safe to come to me and report fraud, waste, and abuse if we're going to have real change in city government.
You have a question?
Yeah, as it relates to the anti-nepotism rule.
Yes.
Contrast the rules as they exist today versus what you're proposing.
Well, there is a nepotism provision within the charter that applies to the top officials within the city. This is far broader and also would deal with the question of people serving under the authority of people to whom they are related, either by blood or by some other type of affiliation and relationship. So, although the charter already has a fairly clear anti-nepotism provision, it is limited in the scope of how it's applied. This would be far broader, both in terms of what types of relationships are covered and who of the supervisors will be covered, and that's the purpose of the ordinance. Correct, you had something.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. I'll get back to the other one. But regarding the purging of emails, what is on the books now? I mean, are you allowed to do anything? Is it free range?
City
Free reign for?
Yeah, city policy right now is emails are deleted from the city main server after 30 days. That is city policy. The auditor and I have had strong disagreement with that policy. I've had a strong disagreement with that policy for years. The auditor, since she took office last January, there was a committee created, and you need to appreciate why we're frustrated about records management. There was a committee created in 2003 that was to include various stakeholders within the bureaucracy, including the city attorney and the city auditor. That committee never met. When we inquired as to why this committee had never met and why we wanted to go forward with bringing something to the council, the response of the administration was to issue a new administrative instruction and a new committee that did not include the city attorney and the city auditor. That committee, to my knowledge, has yet to produce any report for the city council. We want action, we want something at the council so that the council can reconsider this entire issue of records. The other frustration, and I exclude the council members here, is that when the auditor and I then brought this to the council for discussion for scheduling, the council refused to schedule. So we want a hearing on records. The way records are maintained in this city is not acceptable in a modern organization. There are all kinds of excuses about why it can't be done, and I think they're largely bogus, an excuse to preserve the current regime of non-accountability. Because when you don't have the emails, no one ever actually does something. Things just magically happen, and no one is responsible. It's about transparency, and it's about accountability, and the public's right to know.
All right,
we need better records.
This gets back to a question that I wanted to ask, but I was going to hold it for a bit. If council didn't take the initiative to not only set up but conduct these meetings, and now you want council to approve this ordinance, and it appears council is behind you, isn't this the fox taking charge over the...
Not at all, because if you take a look at the proposal we've made for records, we've proposed to resuscitate the existing internal committee, but we've also proposed a public committee that would include representatives from the press, representatives from our labor unions, representatives from business groups, and representatives from the League of Women Voters, so that there would be a public critique and commentary of what we plan to do going forward. This is a very carefully tailored proposal in which the public can be intricately involved before it happens, not complaining about it afterwards. We intend to do this the right way, and we want to get it done. We want the council to move forward with its appointments in September. We want a new records policy by the end of this calendar year.
Hey, John.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr. Abraham.
A read of the charter would imply that the Public Ethics Commission would be responsible for the type of actions that you all have gathered for. Is this an admission that the Public Ethics Commission hasn't worked and isn't working?
I'm not going to address that. There's no such admission at all. In terms of the issue of records, we've had a very healthy dialogue with Mr. Purnell at the Public Ethics Commission. He's here today. He is a member of staff, so he's not an elected, so that kind of changes where his role can be. But I'm confident in my past dealings with Mr. Purnell at the Ethics Commission, I'm confident that he will be generally supportive of all of this and will be working closely, particularly on the ethics training with City Attorney Ruby.
You have 2 of 8 council members here today.
Yes, sir.
What makes you think that you're going to get the support of the majority of council for this if only 2 members bother to show up today?
Well, first of all, you can't have too many more. You're going to have a Brown Act violation. So I'm confident that we will be able to get these through the council. But the point I want to make today is that it is critical to public confidence going forward that the council not get involved in sort of petty bickering and the political game of who gets blamed and who gets credit. No, we need to do this all together. We want a unanimous vote from the council. It is time for the elected leadership to stand up and be counted. Are you really for transparency and accountability, or are you going to continue the game of doing things behind closed doors in a way that erode public confidence in this government? We want, let me repeat it again, we demand a unanimous vote of the council on the entire package in September. It's time for everyone to stand up and be counted.
Hi.
Yes.
Question
Yes.
about all of the, about this package. I'm not seeing anything in here about costs would be, and I'm wondering if there's been an assessment of the cost of implementing this kind of package.
Many of these won't have any cost at all. There will be a financial analysis. Once these get scheduled at the council, there's always a financial analysis that's performed by the staff. We would be happy to work with you and get you information by the end of the day on what we estimate the costs to be.
John, can
Yes,
I answer the
absolutely.
question that Kelly
Please do.
Rayburn had? Kelly, you wanted me to comment on...
Well, Chris's question about, give us your sense of what the council's support is for the packages that need to be approved by the council.
I haven't had a chance to ask the other council members. As John said, we can't do policy behind closed doors. But I see this as all of the branches of government coming together and rallying around some very good programs for good government reforms. I see no reason why the full council wouldn't support these things. I do not, from my own perspective, I do not want to paint a picture of competition or acrimony between any of the branches of government. I think now more than ever, it's clear that we all need to pull together and cooperate to do things in the public interest. So I don't see conflicts between the city council or the other electeds. I think this is the time for us to recognize the merit in these reform proposals and get them implemented as soon as possible.
Pat, with that said, is the mayor on board with this?
I don't know.
The mayor in principle is on board with this. As I said earlier, the one measure that is purely administrative is the personnel policy, personnel administrative reforms. And the mayor has assured me as of yesterday that he is in principle in agreement and has directed and asked Mr. Lindheim to work with my staff towards some type of a resolution by the end of the week and an issuance of new administrative instructions. Let me say that's exactly What Pat had to say, Councilmember Kernahan, pardon me, my friend Pat, what Councilmember Kernahan had to say is exactly on point. I am issuing this to some extent as a challenge, but my hope, as with the discussion with the mayor yesterday about these reforms, my hope is, in the interest of moving forward and in the interest of reestablishing public confidence, that we will all be together in putting these reforms in place, and that we won't have to have some type of a squabble over it. That's why we want the unanimous vote. Public confidence has to be restored. Yes, Mr. McCullough, and then Mr. Honda.
Hi, Mr. Russo. I'm one of the residents who really welcome this set of reforms. It's going to be mainly, it seems, addressing the employees. But the perception among many residents, like myself, is that the problem isn't so much with the employees, but with the political leadership. So we're wondering what kind of reforms are you going to have that are going to deal with the problems that many residents see, such as conflict of interest, what people think of as backroom dealing, special favors to friends. Those are the things that I think residents are most concerned with.
I hear you loud and clear, but some of those issues are more leaning on the political than the legal side. Conflict of interest is a state law issue. We often seek advice from various agencies in Sacramento on different problems that have come up. Let me say that the package of reforms that are before you today will create systems that will make it far more difficult for there to be an environment in which questionable dealings could take place. Because these, although none of these issues in and of themselves are particularly exciting or sexy, as a package, they will help to create a different culture. And again, that's why it's so important that we have a unanimous vote of the council.
John, could I make a comment on
yes.
that? I think the whistleblower ordinance is, and the other programs as well, are mechanisms by which any kind of impropriety would be identified, whether it was something wrongdoing on the part of an elected official or of an employee. So to have the city employees know what's going on in their departments, and if they see a council member interfering in a way that's prohibited by the charter, that's the kind of thing they can do whistleblowing on. So I think it's a pretty far-reaching program that impacts the conduct of the elected officials as well.
In the end, you cannot, but let's also be clear. I mean, this is a very important set of reforms and creates a good environment and creates the right systems. You can't create a perfect mousetrap. You do have to have the right people as well. So, and that's a political question and one that's not appropriately addressed by the auditor or the attorney at this time. Mr. Honda and then Mr. Williams.
The last major reform that was attempted was the Sunshine Ordinance in 1997.
Correct.
And the council that is going to be considering this has not kept pace with the rest of the state. San Jose and other cities automatically put council members' calendars online. Issues related to the hiring of relatives of council members, none of those are addressed there. And so if you're going to first try to convince the public this is full reform, why is it only the city's workforce? Why is it not the elected officials? Question number one. And question number two, as a follow-up to that, is that in things like email transmissions and such, the city is inept in a number of ways. There are cases I've gotten where they've actually not purged emails for 8 months. And once they're discovered, they just bog down in the process of review and redaction and drag out. I'm still waiting for Jerry Brown's emails, which there are 7 boxes of that haven't been fully reviewed by staff.
Let me take the latter question first. I think you know I'm largely sympathetic, and that's why the records issue is here. So I'm sympathetic to what you're saying about the records and the availability of records and transparency and quick and easy availability to the public. On the question of total reform, I just have to disagree with you philosophically. There's no such thing as total reform. And I wouldn't want to have happen what I think often happens in politics, and that is an argument of the best against the good. This does not purport to be the be-all and end-all, but it is a significant and comprehensive package of reforms that we think is an essential first step to getting this government back into a place where people can have confidence in it. I recognize there are other things that you may want done. There are other things I may want done. But first things first, these are the ones that we felt were the most pressing on an immediate basis. Mr. Williams.
Go ahead, please. Yes. I'm going to ask a political question since there are electeds here. So, based on my non-scientific polling, I'm sure most Oaklanders are very supportive of these reforms. There's a lot of they want to see happen for some time. I'd be remiss if I didn't notice that the mayor's name has been mentioned once by my count, maybe once or twice more. However, Does this represent a leadership moving in a different direction away from the mayor's office?
I don't think so. The mayor, as I said, the mayor has already agreed in principle to the administrative instructions and policy changes that are within his authority. I also believe, based on his earlier statements, both publicly and to me privately, that the issue of records management and the resuscitation of the records management committee, I believe he will look favorably upon that as well, and hope to get an answer from him on that as well by the end of the week. But understand, too, that the mayor is the chief executive officer of this corporation. The role and the reason why it was appropriate that the auditor and the attorney come forward is our role is a little different. We are independently elected, and we are not the policymakers. We don't get to make these calls, but it's our job to serve as the watchdogs for the public. That's why it's so important that these positions are independent, because we can't be fired by the people at City Hall. We answer to the public. And so when we observe that there are these problems, we bring them forward. Let me reiterate, there is nothing in this package that we have not, either together or separately, brought forward over the past several years. In fact, some of the changes we're proposing on personnel were the administrative policy of this city earlier in this decade, and were changed several years ago, in my estimation, to the detriment of the public interest. So we have a different role. We are the watchdogs, and that's why we are interested in things that many people don't care about, like systems. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's fun stuff, but it's not as appealing or as some things can be. But we think it's critical, and now is the time, because the public is watching now. This is an opportunity politically for the auditor and me to get this issue on the table in a way that often the public just isn't all that interested, because they're concerned about important issues in their lives, like public safety and the like. Our position is when the city doesn't operate as it should, that does have an impact on people's lives. It's just indirect and hard to see. Yes, sir.
I have two questions. One is, if there is any violations of any of these ordinances, could they lead to any criminal action by the police department, or would that be handled internally?
You know, I can't answer that question off the top of my head. Charter violations are a criminal issue. You should know, however, that my office, as of this date, still has no authority over criminal issues. That's for the district attorney to keep an eye on whenever there's a political problem that rises in that way. I'm going to take two more questions.
Well, the other question,
yeah.
so
hold on a second.
One more for Ms. Ruby. Regarding the waste and fraud, do you foresee any projected physical money coming back into the city, these savings as a result of this?
Absolutely. So it is, the certified fraud examiners reported in 2006 that organization can usually expect that 5% of their revenues is going out the door due to actual occupational fraud. So for us, that's $50 million. So we can't have a whistleblower program that would not provide benefit to the city. It's incumbent in its actual existence, because it provides a vehicle for employees to come forward and citizens to come forward and identify fraud, waste, and abuse that's out there that we can investigate. So they have an opportunity through confidentiality. This is why the identity, protecting the identity of the whistleblower was so important to me. You open up that vehicle, and now they can provide not just comments about this is wrong or that's wrong. They can actually substantiate. They feel comfortable, because that fear of retaliation now is taken away, that if it does occur, we're going to protect them. But the first step is I can actually protect their identity once the legislation in Sacramento is passed.
What about in the event that someone wants to blow the whistle on you or John within your office or within City Hall? Is there a mechanism to prevent conflict of interest there built into this?
It's addressed.
So in relation to the whistleblower ordinance, you'll see in there that if there's issues in relation to any department in the city except for the city auditor's office, that falls under my authority to investigate. If it is an item which involves my office, then that goes to the city attorney to investigate.
Yes, sir. Last question.
With regard to whistleblower retaliation, why didn't you propose making the policy to fire someone's ass who does it? Because if you really want to stop it, they should be threatened with losing their job. and no severance packages.
Yeah, like I said, we're not going to discuss that, so I'll take one other question. I'm sorry, you can talk to me offline about that, but we're not going to take that. We're not here to do a forensic about what's happened. We're here to fix things going forward. This is not about blame or any of that.
That
This
was
is
going
about
forward. It has to do with your proposal.
I understand you feel that way, but it's not appropriate for us to comment because that clearly has to do with a specific case, and we're not going to deal with it today. It's not appropriate. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I'd like to follow up on that, because if this ordinance is passed, nothing is grandfathered. So moving forward, is there the potential for people to be fired or to be penalized in some way?
No. Okay. No, there are different processes that are in place, many of which are outside the city, that are moving forward, and it's inappropriate for us to comment on them.
So
About things that have happened. No, that's it. I'm not going to take any more questions on this issue. I said I'm not going to deal with the issues that are at stake.
No, we're asking about the future. In
We are-
the future,
Yeah, in
the
the
maximum
future, there's a
penalty
violation.
is $5,000, is that?
On the
Civil-
nepotism.
On the whistleblower, it's for civil penalties up to 5,000 and regular personnel action.
But not termination.
John, I think we were talking about whistleblowing.
Personnel
action.
action.
Retaliation, I think you were thinking about.
It would
I was thinking
follow
about nepotism.
the regular process of personnel action. So you would follow the normal personnel procedures for counseling or disciplining an employee. That could include that.
Which our other initiatives would involve some oversight by the attorney's office on personnel matters, which has not been present in the past several years. Which is why that is so important to get it signed by the end of this week, so that we're actually involved and we can assess what the damages are and whether discipline has been appropriate in cases where discipline is appropriate.
And reduce losses and liability to the city that have been occurring up until now. These reforms will reduce those liabilities.
So are you saying that there will be some retroactive inspection of recent events by your office?
There has been a proposal by the city council president to perform a personnel,
An audit of hiring practices for the past 3 years.
and that is
Scheduled
obvious.
for council on Tuesday.
Right, it's coming up next week. That's a separate, that's not a systematic initiative, that's a forensic. That's a separate matter, we're not dealing with that today. Obviously, it's related.
On a different note,
This is the last one. Go ahead.
the IRS, federal government, a number of agencies have provision where the public, if they report wrongdoing, and the agency saves money, the citizen or outfit making the report gets a percentage of the savings over the first year or 3 years or whatever. The city of Oakland's never had a program like that. Is there any discussion or thought about something like that as a part of this?
That is not part of the process right now. I'm not saying in the future it couldn't be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
In 1993, we had the Charter Review Commission, and we haven't had a significant charter review since. What's your position on the possible review of the charter in the future and how this fits into that, if it happens at all?
I think a charter ought to be looked at every 15 or 20 years, but these issues are not, the issues we're facing right now, in my estimation, are not an indictment of the strong mayor system, which some people have tried to make it that because they like to return to the old days. In the so-called good old days, there was even less transparency and public access to what was happening at City Hall. I don't think depriving the voters of the right to select the chief executive officer of the corporation is the right approach to what's wrong at City Hall. What's wrong at City Hall can be fixed, and it can be fixed through better systems and, frankly, through a more agitated public that is not reactive but is actually proactive in demanding good standard procedures, good standard operating procedures like most well-run organizations have, many of which we don't have here in Oakland.
Just a short follow-up. I think that it's not so much the people who are calling for a charter reform with respect to getting rid of strong mayor, but modifying it in some kind of way.
I always think that when people talk about constitutional conventions and charter reforms, it's a way to duck the real issues. The real boring, day-to-day issues have to do with what are the administrative policies here and what checks and balances and transparencies do they provide. And you can change the charter all you like. If you don't have good administrative policies, it still isn't going to happen. Generally, the press and the public is not interested in administrative policy. It doesn't make nice pictures for TV, and it's boring. But right now, because of the environment we're in politically, the public is actually watching, and that's why we're bringing all these proposals that were put aside with no comment by the press or the public. All of these proposals are being put forward again because they were the right idea when they were first proposed, and now the public can see why these administrative reforms are so important.
City Auditor Ruby, first of all, your statement on how did this all come about in terms of formation of this policy? Who approached whom? You, Russo? I'm just curious.
The city attorney and I have been working on these different reforms, as was stated during the press conference, either separately or together in relation to records management. So I've been working on Whistleblower pretty much since I took office. And then the ethics training has also come about as a part of these reforms of the things that we saw that there was an urgent need to create a reform package. So we put everything together in this package, and that will be presented to council for passage in September.
How long is this going to take for the city to really make this part of its DNA, its cultural DNA? In 2 years, a year, 3, 4, 5, 10?
Well, obviously change takes a while for people to get used to. But as far as getting it passed and implemented, when it goes in September and gets passage, we'll be working to implement as quickly as possible so that the whistleblower hotline will be up, that the programs, the nepotism, anti-nepotism, and the things that the city attorney addressed, to get those up and running. To have a change in culture takes time. So that's the reason why we're doing the cultural assessment that I talked about. So I will have an ongoing survey of where our culture, assessment of the city's culture is, and we should see that progress. So that's the best way to answer your question. So it's not only are we implementing these, we're putting a process in place,
sense, right?
Yeah, to really say, are we improving, or if there's ethical blind spots out there, we're going to see them in time to address them versus having the city be damaged from those.
Councilmember Kernigan, in the presentation, there are a lot of reforms listed, but from your experience, how long will it take for these reforms to become part of the city's process and cultural DNA, as I asked you offline?
Well, I think some of it should be quite immediate. The whistleblower ordinance, as soon as it's passed, will protect the confidentiality of informants. So everybody in the city, including electeds, will be on notice that if they do something wrong and it's observed by others, it's likely to be reported. So that might make people more careful.
Okay. And in general, when do you expect the council it's coming before council on the 16th. This should pass, you would think, right?
The whistleblower ordinance, yes, I expect it to pass, and then the other items that were part of this reform package will come in September.
And if anyone has questions for you or your constituents, what number should they call?
238-7002. That's my main office number. We're happy to help folks with constituent problems or answer any policy questions.
Thanks. Sir, what did you think of today's proceedings?
I think it's about time. We've been looking for this as citizens for quite some time. Some of us who are involved in the things that go on in the city realize that some of the things that go on are not proper. And we've been waiting for someone to step forward and say, stop, let's reevaluate and let's do something different. So this is refreshing.
Yeah, I agree with my friend. It's absolutely refreshing and it's necessary. And as I've said, I think we need to go a step further. Several of our citizens are going to try to get together with the United States Attorney for the Northern District of California and ask that he impanel a federal grand jury to look at federal criminal violations, both current and past. And that would include elected officials as well, which these reforms unfortunately don't do.
That's a provocative statement. When is this going to take place? Is there a website or something about
Well, I already proposed this to City Council and asked them to join me and ask the mayor to join me and fellow citizens. to do this last week. I never heard back from any of them, of course. And I've talked to several citizens here in the city, NCPC chairs, who are now interested in doing it. So as soon as I gather and garner more support, I'm going to call the U.S. Attorney. I feel pretty confident we'll get a meeting with him.
Now, on that note, someone watching this is going to be very angry with me if I don't get contact information from you.
Yeah, Jeff Collins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an email?
No, I don't have an email that I'd like put out at this moment.
Phone number?
Not really. People know me. They know how to get in touch with me. They've known me for a while.
All right. Okay. Thank you.